Hello and welcome. Happy Monday if you're in here live. If you're not in here live, well, then happy whichever day you have to be watching or listening to this. I don't have any programming notes, really. So let me go ahead and pull up the what we're talking about today, the subject, if you will, of these streams. Twilight 2000. Oh, no. Let's see. Maybe that's working. Oh, no. Stop goofing on me. Okay, here we go. A little bit of well, it's Monday, so I suppose I shouldn't be averse to a little shenanigans on the part of the software, but all right, the window is shared. We're looking at the PDF of the referee's guide. There's stuff on factions and things that I am interested in. So we went through and kind of covered, I think, the most important stuff about the encounters. Now I think we're going to get a list of encounters. I'm probably going to sort of slide through them. I think we all get the point. The important things to note is, like the cards I showed during the unboxing, these have like playing cards. They have a number and a suit, and then some icons which pretty much display when these things can take place. So you would draw one of these encounter cards, and this one, for instance, Forest Fire, has off-road, daylight, and camping, which means that those are the phases in which, or the locations and phases in which this can take place. Off-road, which is basically anything not on a road during the day, and also at camping. And then the one beneath it, Pack of Wolves, also off-road, day or night, because we see both symbols. So during the day, during the night, and also while camping, so on and so forth. Maybe the last interesting couple of things that we can look at here are the categories and the motivations, because I'm not sure if I got to those last time. If I did, and it's slightly repeating what I did in the last stream, I apologize. But you could pick cards, and the cards give either using the encounter cards or using a deck of cards. It will apply to both. That's one nice thing about having their encounter cards have both the essentially, I don't even know what you would call your standard playing card, if that has a name, your sort of poker information, and the encounter information is you use the same deck for two things. So on the one hand, you can use the deck to draw your encounter. On the other hand, like this, for a category, you can use it as a poker deck. Pull out a 2, okay, that's weather. Pull out a jack, it's a military patrol. Pull out an ace, it's a settlement, so on and so forth. Hey, walking the path. Nice to see you. Hope you had a good weekend. And then for motivations, it's another table. This one, so if the categories took the value of the card from 2 all the way to ace, then the motivations use the suit: clubs, violence; diamonds, wealth; hearts, fellowship; spades, power. And if I recall from the original Twilight 2000, they also used playing cards as a method of randomly generating stuff. And they had a pretty interesting chart. I'll have to pull it up at some point. I know I posted a picture of it on the Instagram a little while back, but they did something similar, but they got a little more granular in terms of the motivations. They had different levels of clubs, which would tell you kind of how that violence played out, and the same thing for the other one. So you could probably look that up, or I'm sure I can dig it up if somebody wants. Let me know. I'll try to dig it up. But here you can just use the more general one. So we're getting a whole list of encounters. Like I said, I'm not going to read through all these. Let's just suffice it to say that there are at least 52. I would presume about 52. Now we get some tables, one on radio chatter, one on rumors. I said before, I really like the radio chatter concept. You have a radio, you can tune in, it's just another way of getting rumors. But the nice thing is using that technology in a way that helps generate content. It's just a great thing. A radio has real purpose in the fiction, and of course mechanically for the players, and able to communicate all the stuff. But it's also this way of getting rumors to the players when they may not be in a spot, or information. Have to be rumors, can be any kind of information, be able to get it to the players in a spot in which or where otherwise they would be by themselves. So they're out camping out alone in the deep wilderness. How are they going to get this information? Okay, well, there's radio chatter. It's something I wish if we could figure out, or I could figure out a nice fantasy variant because that is something that would be great to be able to say, hey, I mean, you get into supernatural, there's dreams and all kinds of stuff, but just in terms of very simple player facing and a way of player initiating, because they have to turn on the radio, they have to want to do that. But you can also inject it in terms of, the characters, the players are trying to use the radio to do something, and what are they, as they're twisting knobs and dials, they land on a broadcast that they weren't expecting, something of that sort. I just think it's really cool. Also get a rumor table, a whole bunch of rumors. Now we're getting these mood elements, which I like. It's this way of painting your atmospherics, and they have split up in terms of road, woods, and fields. I will read maybe one of each just to get a vibe for the road. As a mood element, we get a blackened husk of a car on the side of the road, exposed ribs of a corpse hanging out an open door, picked clean by time and carrion eaters, a light rain drums of funeral rhythm on the rusting roof, old bullet holes let faint light through the left and right sides of the vehicle. So we have a very vivid image, and it's one that I think we can recognize any kind of Terminator, Terminator type film, post-apocalyptic type film, disaster film. This is, war film, right? We're used to these images. So while on the one hand, I might say, wow, that's really specific. The first time that's going to sound awesome when I read it. But if I roll that again, there's a 10. So if I just use these and I don't make my own, I'm going to repeating. But at the same time, having read that to myself, I can come up with all kinds of variations on it, because I totally understand and can visualize in my brain that cinematic shot they're talking about. You look and you see the bombed out car, and then maybe at first you don't notice it, and then you see as you're passing maybe a corpse inside that's also burned, and of course the signs of violence and all those things. And I can really riff on that. So yeah, all these 10 I'm sure are similar in that they're going to be really vivid but highly specific. But over time, I'm going to be able to riff my own out of those elements, or even, I could combine some of these elements as well. Let's see. Now, Nothing's in the stream. Hey, Nothing says, yeah, I like the idea of some guy holding up somewhere broadcasting news would be a great way to start each session. Survival radio news says a plague is moving in from the east. Absolutely. Could be there could definitely be a, Radio Free Europe kind of thing, or equivalent, or Radio Anarchy or whatever. They could give out stuff. Could even give out, talk about missions and rewards and dangers. Really interesting things. Or it could just be, it doesn't have to be the same person each time. It could just be random things that you hear. You're trying to land on the right military channel, but you get an SOS, or you get some comms that you're hearing half of, or a conversation or something else. But yeah, the idea of being that there's some kind of radio broadcast, what was it, Good Morning Vietnam kind of thing, but from some secret bunker somewhere that's staying alive and maybe even protected, someone that's neutral ground, so to speak, because they are delivering these news. All the different factions kind of leave them alone. And then, of course, what might happen when their situation changes, and how might the PCs figure into such things? And then walk in the path ads, or misinformation seeking to undermine the PCs. Absolutely. What kind of trap might someone lay by saying, hey, we've got extra food if you're around, come to these coordinates, and then it's not food or whatever, it's a trap. It's a twap. Let's read one of these woods mood elements. Number 7. Nope. Yep. This is number 7. A dead airman hangs from their chute, tangled in the upper branches of a tall tree. His white helmet hangs slack against the chest. A breeze stirs the lifeless puppet as the wind tugs at its flight suit and pushes it gently back and forth. Again, very vivid, very specific image that anybody that's watched war films or anything similar is going to be very familiar with. It's a really common trope, I think, when you see setting the scene in a military style movie. I haven't really read too many military fiction books, so I assume they happen in books too, but I definitely see movies, and the guy will look up and you see the parachute, with the airman dead, hanging from a tree or something. Hey, Terrence, nice to see you in the chat. Now, another thing, going back to the broadcaster idea, says then the PCs could meet the broadcaster later, or someone claiming to be them. Yeah, there's lots of things. Who was that guy in the Firefly universe? I feel like the Firefly universe would be a good, if you want to think of what a sci-fi kind of version of this might be. I know the Firefly has that central authority, but the show itself took place in those outer worlds, which were all very much fragmented and didn't have central leadership. They had that guy, what was like the voice of the universe or something that they had. It was interesting. You could do kind of something similar to that. And of course, there could certainly be groups like Reavers. I don't know if they're necessarily some kind of, lunatic cannibals, but and Waterworld. Did I mention Waterworld? Waterworld would be super interesting with this. With the Reavers and the what did they have? The what were the guys that there was like the Reavers, there was the guys with the gasoline, smokers. I know there were some cannibals. They had some other name, I think, or were cannibals the Reavers? I don't know. Anyway, that kind of same sort of idea. And then for the fields, here we go. A redness comes over the yellow grass, stretching to the horizon as the sun descends on yet another day. Clouds like darkened cotton candy are pulled across the sky in striations of deep blue and purple. They could be the subject of a painting, and perhaps, in another time it might have been. Only slouching telephone poles now speak of the presence of man. So that's kind of it. So, right, we had these two very military ones that I read just randomly. And here we have ones very naturalistic, but still there's that little bit of gloom. As pretty as the image of the clouds like cotton candy, we do have the redness over the yellow grass, which I thought was going to be a blood symbol. And I think maybe they're still trying to get a little bit of that blood element, but it's that kind of sunset, pretty, and yet the signs of civilization that's fallen apart are there. Terrence quoting from Waterworld, my boat. Yep. You got me out to get out. That's such an underrated movie. Such great performances. Certainly by, what's his name? Well, Kevin Costner was good. Man, why am I spacing out his name? Easy Rider, Dennis. Brain is going fried, and it's only Monday. Dennis Hopper. It took me a sip of tea to remember. Dennis Hopper, also great. All right, this is what everything's interesting, but I think when I looked at the table of contents right before I started my stream, what caught my attention first was this: factions and forces. This is chapter 4 if you're following from home. When I first spotted them, I was glad to see friendlies, but Top wasn't so sure. I led him up the hill where we went prone and observed the unit. Looked like Americans, but Top had me go get Cassia. She came up the hill and had her look through her scope and see what they were chattering about. See, she can read lips. Had a deaf mother. Turns out they were all Russians, probably Spetsnaz. I'm sure glad I didn't go and say hello. So, here we go. And this leads back to that idea of, I know this one, I was going to say leads back to the idea that nobody's friendly. In this case, it's playing up the kind of Russians masquerading as Americans. I think the other thing that is maybe underneath here is that you can't, nobody's friendly just because of what they're wearing or even what nationality they're from, because they could have been American and still been trouble, even though in this instance, that wasn't the problem. Despite the collapse of civilization, there are groups and organizations that still hold sway over small or large areas. Such groups are called factions, and a number of them are described in this chapter. You can choose one or more of these factions to populate an area the PCs are traveling through, or create your own factions. Each faction has a listed faction type that corresponds to the faction type indicated in some of the encounters listed in the previous chapter. By connecting an encounter to a faction, you can create larger narratives in which the PCs interact with the factions and become their enemies or allies. Terrence talking about Waterworld. My favorite bit character is the old guy in the boat in the oil tank. So relieved he was about to die. Oh, yeah. Well, what was it? Dennis Hopper spits on him or something for some water. And then, when Kevin Costner drops the torch or the whatever that thing is in the end, I think he says, "Thank God," or "Thank you," or something. Yeah, they just had little great character kind of world building bits in there. I like Dennis Hopper when he's got the glass eye and he's asking all his yes men are like, "Oh, it looks great, boss, looks great." And then he asks the kid, the kid's like, "It looks like crap." And Hopper says, "That's why I love children. No guile." And then he looks in the mirror. It does look like crap. There's a lot of good stuff. All right, let me not get too sidetracked because I could do a stream on Waterworld. I don't know what the stream will be about in terms of gaming, or maybe just be let's spend an hour on Waterworld and see how few people will want to watch that stream, or maybe more. I don't know. I could do it. Don't bet me on it because then I'll have to do it. So I'm not super interested in the specific factions as much as I'm interested in the mechanics and kind of how they're laying them out. So we've got types of factions. Looks like we've got military as a type of faction. I guess this first one they have here, Poland 5th Infantry Division, is a U.S. military faction type. It's given some goals and then some idea of the forces inside this faction, which I like. The goals for this faction are the unit is battered and broken. There is some talk about regrouping in Germany, but most of the division just wants to go home. Since the division is no longer under a united command, some units have escaped the area of Calais by any means possible and in any directions they could go, while others are setting up shop to stay and fight or desert and become marauders. So this is a very loose faction. Then we have another faction, 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Also has goals. We have a table here about the 5th Infantry Division. Okay, that's the first one, though, the mechanized. Has oh, okay, this is kind of cool. So it gives you these, I don't know if they're I guess they're pseudo locations or sort of, I guess, subdivisions of the division. HQ and support staff. First, what's BDE? I'm not familiar with these terms. Infantry. First. I don't know I'm not a big military. I'm not big on the military jargon, but suffice to say, he gives you both, essentially all these different units. How many people were in them peacetime, and then how many are in them now, and then at least what combat vehicles they've got right now. There it says wet hex crawling. Yeah, hex crawling by sea. There probably is some good things to think about in terms of hex crawling on the ocean. So I could probably make that happen. I have to do a lot of think about myself because I haven't really done much. I tend to hand wave ocean voyaging. I think of it more as kind of more of a point crawl with some ability to get lost. I suppose if you were specifically looking for islands that were unmapped, like you're just tooling around the ocean. I don't know if people usually do that. I mean, usually they have a goal, whether it's circumnavigation, saying, hey, I'm going to go straight this direction, and hopefully I should know where I should come out, and I'm just going to keep going until either I get where I said I was going to go or I hit something. Usually I feel like people have something they're trying to do. They're not just tooling the seas, but for another time. All right, so we get some Soviet ones. So it's a faction types. I guess if we're going to think more generally, we've got military. Then there's another faction type that are called Marauders. This one's called the Jagged Sword. Their goals, while expelling all foreign troops is the immediate goal of the Jagged Sword, their endgame is to reestablish the Polish Third Republic as the first functioning nation to reemerge in Europe. To this end, they do not merely patrol but attack and hold territory. The Jagged Sword pursues a war, though not the one of the two great powers imagine they should. They are wary of any alliances, and if a temporary treaty is agreed upon, the Jagged Sword considers the opposite party enemies as soon as said treaty ends. Such treaties are exceedingly rare. The Jagged Sword finds itself largely on the offensive. They attempt to recruit all native forces, including those who deserted and turned to marauding, but they consider all foreign military personnel, and to a lesser extent foreign civilians, enemies. Poland for Poland is their motto and vow. That's a pretty interesting take. So they're marauders, but they have marauders that are not just out to be wealthy. They are trying to reestablish a Polish state. Sweden, we've got a U.S. military faction, the 2nd Marine Division. We have a Soviet military faction, the 76th Guards VDV Division. Oh, there's another one called the Admiral, who's a Soviet military faction, but I guess he's one individual. The Admiral's goal is to secure and hold all of southern Sweden occupied until it can join the USSR as a Swedish Socialist Republic. Swedish Socialist Republic. To that end, he avoids unnecessarily civilian bloodshed and often helps the locals by providing manpower or equipment for planting and gathering crops, and has had his men assist with projects to restore water and power in many communities. He fully intends to complete his mission and become the head of the new Soviet state himself. And then his forces, it's interesting that he's totally separate than these other ones. So I'm be curious to read these other Soviet military goals, because clearly the Admiral's sort of one on himself, though he does have some Spetsnaz, some naval infantry, some guerrillas, and some BTR-80s. I'm guessing those are some kind of combat vehicles. Oh, I see. So these are interrelated. I guess these factions are interrelated because the 76th Guards VDV Division, their goal is to obey the Admiral, basically. Headed by some guy named General or lady named General Bakunin. Goals are simple and straightforward. Obey the Admiral so as to keep his command and his unit intact. Treat the Swedes fairly in order to avoid rebellion and partisan activity, and do his utmost to bring his men back to the Soviet Union alive at the end of the war, whatever its outcome. Patriot and a communist, he is also a realist and understands more than most that the world has changed in more of the ways than just warfare. He's got 1,200 soldiers and 18 BMD-2s. And then we have a Swedish marauder faction called the Circuit. Despite what visionaries claim, there is no unified command, let alone any overall plan for the circuits. They don't fight a war, rather they try to reclaim what was once the people's land and expel the invaders. Some believe that when enough circuits have united, the nation will somehow be reestablished, and the circuit will become the new nation's protector. The circuit grows slowly. It has patience and the firm belief in being right in a very Swedish way. It has a sense of duty and responsibility mixed with an almost mystical idea of, quote, a manifest destiny, unquote, that is not quite religious but seem that way to outsiders. So it's sort of a different, right? It's similar to that Polish Jagged Sword faction in terms of goals, but it clearly has a different, they wanted to give it a, I suppose, a more native flavor in terms of what makes sense for Sweden. And then we have some general factions, the Shepherd's Flock, another Marauder faction. Our first civilian faction called the Sanctuary, the October Guard, is a Soviet military Spetsnaz faction. And we have an intelligence faction. I would have liked to have seen, unless I missed it, maybe it's here somewhere, some just generally what faction types, what they mean. Other than, I guess they're flags for those encounters. It might have been interesting to see if they do other things with them. Maybe they do. Because we also have intelligence factions as well. The GRU. Don't turn off the light, otherwise the GRU will come. We have KGB. Now we get to, so those are all factions and forces. Now we're on to Chapter 5, Scenario Sites. Jonesy carries around a pack of waterproof maps. He says most of them are classified, but none of that matters anymore. Each shows a topography of a part of what used to be my country. All these symbols for various units that I've already memorized. The X in the rectangle means light infantry. An X with an oval in it means friendly mechanized infantry. The red dots are places, towns, sometimes. Places I've heard of or knew people from. Each one of those red dots is now some potential secret horror. I try to imagine them as they might have been before the war, but I can't. Under every red dot is something. On one of Jonesy's maps, he circled one of those dots and wrote, Doc, R.I.P. I never bring Doc up. I feel like I replaced him. Ooh, more darkness. Darkness in the future of Twilight 2000. Or our past, their future. Or their present. Our past, their present. Somebody's future. Oh, did I miss this page? No. Next to encounters, the second pillar of content for a game of Twilight 2000 is scenario sites. While encounters are what happens to the PCs during their travels, the scenario sites are the destinations. They can offer information, resources, protection, or something or someone to protect. Scenario sites can also be connected to factions like those in the previous chapter. All right, so they're differentiating for us some different things. Counters are stuff that happen during travel. Scenario sites are the places you're trying to get to. So they are locations. I suppose a location could be a road or a roadside, but I think we're talking more sites of some kind. Though we'll have to see what kind of they come up with. But these are the destinations. Maybe that's the biggest thing. Is whatever it is, it's somewhere that you are trying to get to, or somebody's trying to get to. It is not on the way to somewhere, only on the way to somewhere else. Of course, obviously you can have multiple cities on the way to some other city, for example, but at some point these are destinations in and of themselves, places people are trying to go or maybe avoid going or take it to against their will, blah, blah, blah. We have some box text on reusing scenario sites. It can happen that the player simply ignores a scenario site that you have prepared and just go somewhere else. If that happens, don't hesitate to reuse it somewhere else, use it elsewhere on the map. Just rename the place, make any other changes as needed, and place it in a new location. So it's that kind of, it's like kind of quantum ogre-ish approach. I don't mind it too much in this sense because unlike fantasy scenarios or fantasy encounters, whatever, tend to be kind of highly specific. You are going to meet a mind flayer. So you take that mind flayer up and then you put him somewhere else. It's more, it feels more intrusive, I think, in a way, if that makes sense. Just that, okay, the mind flayer was to the west and we decided not to go. Now there's a mind flayer in the east, huh? But if it's a town and we never got to the town, and so now we're going to go to another town. So you just kind of reuse what you had for the new town and make some changes. I feel like that's a lot less, I don't know if egregious is the word. It's not like the quantum ogre thing is awful, especially if you do some work to fix it up. But I think it just the way, maybe because this game type, reusing town assets feels a lot less troublesome in a way than reusing monster encounters or things that we tend to think about in the kind of quantum ogre situation. But in any case, it's obviously a good plan. Reuse your content. If you didn't use it, and I'm a big believer, if they didn't get to the town, and that town hasn't hit the map yet, then that's just assets you can use somewhere else. Like for specific encounters, I feel a bit differently, but for that kind of thing, hey, you go. Just change it to be appropriate. In the 4 pre-made scenario sites in this chapter, NPC locals have Polish names. Alternative Swedish names are given in brackets. If you want to use these scenario sites in other settings, you'll need to change the names and make other tweaks as needed. So we're going to get Swedish and Polish names, so we can use it in either one of their locations. Rumors. A list of a few brief rumors that the PCs may have heard about the scenario location, giving them some reason to come here. A rumor can even be told by a person living at the scenario site, asking the PCs to come with them. If possible, try to adapt the rumors to the big dreams or moral codes of the PCs. If PCs have no specific reason to stop here, you can always add a roadblock of some sort, forcing their hand. Be careful with the roadblocks and hand forcing. I think some of it is fine, and some of it totally makes sense. You're approaching some kind of settlement, you're driving on the road, even if you don't intend on stopping, the road probably leads right to the settlement. And it's also probable that if this settlement has anything about it, it's probably protected, and those people are probably going to be actively protecting it, hence roadblocks, other kinds of manners like that. However, you can easily fall down that rabbit hole where your players just feel like you're pushing them down ye old railroad because you're forcing them down, a single path all the time. So that's a great tool, and in different contexts, it can totally make sense, but be cautious, be careful. If you find yourself using it multiple times, like, oh, hey, I used a roadblock the last time and I'm getting ready to do another roadblock, maybe think, maybe I shouldn't do that this time. Do something else. Give them, come up with other reasons that will entice them, or just let them bypass it, or make it something that's maybe less subtractive than a roadblock. A roadblock feels like, right, you are putting obstacles in front of their way. You could also give them something like, hey, we got a great deal on food. Someone else, right, make it something additive where there's a reason other than maybe force that might entice them. Because I imagine players, food and supplies, ammo, and things like that are going to be big draws. So if that stuff's available in these sites and you make it known, they will probably want to go find them, and they won't feel like you're kind of forcing their hand at all. So so as far as how these are created, we're going to get a situation, which is a brief description of what's really going on here, the history of the place, the key NPCs and current conflicts. A good scenario location, you always have something going on, some form of conflict to draw the PCs in. Arrival. What do the PCs perceive when they first arrive, or how the PCs are received when they first arrive? Right? Are they friendly? Are they unfriendly? Are they wary? I presume any special notes there. A countdown, which is a list of specific escalating events that will occur if the PCs don't engage in the central conflict in the scenario site, increasing the pressure on the PCs to take sides and act. So this is that kind of ticking clock. The PCs are coming to places, and every place they come to is in some sort of conflict, and the conflict is not static. It's things are happening. Something is going on, and we're gonna see in the ones that they have, and you have to think about for your own locations as, okay, what's going on when the players get to, and how can essentially it get, in a way, I guess, less and less stable. Outcome more and more doubt. It's a really good thing to think about when you're thinking of places, when you're thinking about what's going on, when you want your locations not to feel like just static places where they're going to come in and just refill their pouches and then leave, is think about, and I think specifically here, making reference to dynamic situations. It's not just, let's say, in what it was, A Fistful of Dollars, I think is the one where the Cletus man with no name comes into town, and the town is basically divided between two gangs. And the gangs, in that movie, the gangs are at a stalemate. And Clint Eastwood's man with no name tries to manipulate both sides against each other, and that's kind of what starts the movie. In this case, we want something that the PCs get there, and then maybe when they first get there, right before they get there, right after they get there, something happens to take that stalemate and push it in one direction. And maybe one faction starts winning on the other one, but at great cost. And what does that do in the town? And then for every day they're there, or what can we see with kind of time frames, things are getting worse, and they're going to keep getting worse. And presumably maybe getting to some breaking point that's either going to push the PCs to act or just bring everything down if they truly avoid acting. And that will get you towns that seem dynamic. I always like to think about that stuff, even in locations I've already been to, even in the places like villages, or I was going to say villages, but I really mean safe places, in terms of, if you're thinking going back to kind of OSR gaming, if you think about, oh, look at this is their home village, right? And it's their kind of their safe spot. I like to think about, well, when they're gone for a couple of weeks, what happens in that spot? Anything change the game? Anything? Are there new people coming? Are old people leaving? What can be happening there? And even just things like that, even if I don't want to engage in full-on conflict in that home village, can help bring it alive. But this obviously takes it to another level, and it is thematic in the sense that this is the world. The whole world is like this. Just like asteroids just banging into each other. And so what's happening if you can't really push out and sort of define something? All these forces are just trying to, not even trying to, just by hook or by crook, just causing collapses. So you have to get in there and do something if you want to help or save it or do anything. Then we're going to get NPCs, and we're going to get events. Events are a number of specific potential events that can occur at the scenario site. These can be related to the countdown, but don't need to be. These peripheral events should be optional, used or not used, depending on the PC's actions. The events should also be standalone, not connected in a predetermined narrative. They are typically 5 to 10 in number. I'm guessing those could be things like festivals, market days, or birthday. Happy birthday! That kind of thing. All right, so we're getting the first scenario site, which is the prison. This scenario location is an old prison with plenty of potential for both action and intrigue. You could place it almost anywhere you like on the travel map. So it's not a specific location. You could give it a name, right? But these are basically places that, regardless of whatever the real world maps are, put it where you need it to be. They're totally customizable. Is that the word I'm looking for? So it's not like, here's the prison of Sing Sing, which only makes sense if you're in New York State, but doesn't make sense anywhere else, right? So it's just a prison. In this case, the prison. We've got some rumors. I'll just read a couple of them. An excellent military surgeon works at a former prison in the area. If someone is gravely wounded, she's their best hope. That would be interesting. Wonderful news for a PC, especially if that's a great one, right? If your party has someone who's critically injured, hey, throw that rumor on the radio or have somebody tell them. Another one is a local prison makes alcohol from potatoes. They make enough to produce vast amounts of fuel. I think you can kind of see what they're doing here a little bit with these rumors, which I think is a great idea. they're really kind of playing at the needs of the PCs. I wouldn't doubt it if there would be one in here, or I would make one about maybe they make ammunition. Oh, you guys are low on ammo? I heard there's some ammunition. You get to that prison. Oh, you have someone that's hurt. I heard you can go to the prison. And this is something that you could pull out if the team's just been through something and they find some straggler NPCs or whatever, and they're asking them, hey man, we need ammo. Can you sell some ammo? The guy's like, man, I don't have any ammo, but let me tell you what I heard. There's a prison in the area. They got ammo for days, or fuel, or whatever. So it's playing to those needs of the PC, which is good because especially in a game like this, you think in fantasy games, oh, there's some kind of ideological principle. Oh, the good players are going to want to rescue princes and princesses or normal folk and defeat dragons to make the land a safer place. This kind of game, you might be doing that a little bit, wanting to help people in trouble, but really you're kind of about yourself and your own survival, at least to start. So these rumors are all really looking at those and like usually when things we know the party's gonna need on a practical basis. So we're going to kind of pull at those strings a little bit, see what they need, which I think makes a ton of sense. The situation. Maybe I won't read the situation. Should I read the situation? Kind of want to leave some stuff for people. I don't know. Do I want to read it? Maybe I'll read the first paragraph. There is a place where former sinners live in peace and harmony, a place where there is food, medicine, and protection from the marauders of the world. They grow their own food and live by their own laws. Such a place would appeal to any weary soldier or civilian. Such a place might sound like heaven. In fact, the place is real, and it is a prison. But-um-bum. I mean, that's like a great elevator pitch for a movie or something. So there we go. It's a safe place that is a prison run by maybe prisoners, maybe in this case a whole bunch of people run by their own laws, not unlike New York City and Escape from New York. Is there going to be a Duke of the prison? Nope, but there's a guy named Rasputin. Okay, I'm not going to read any more of the situation. Arrival. Guards from the local cantonment. I don't think I've heard that word before, read that word before, cantonment. Flank one of the brothers or sisters when new folks arrive. Okay, so new arrivals are told they must leave their weapons and the war outside. PCs may store their weapons with the guards, but they likely want to keep them under guard themselves. In either case, they won't get weapons inside without a fight. They are searched thoroughly. All right. Brother or sister? I guess I didn't read it brothers or sisters, but got a lot of them. So there's some kind of religious part here. Maybe I do need to read a little bit more. All right, I'm going to skip it. So anyway, there's guards. You're going to get disarmed. Here's the part that I'm kind of more interested in. We get the countdown. Prison's under pressure, both internally and externally. If the PCs don't intervene, the following events play out. So there's rumors of the old computer disk, which is in some boxed text, a zip drive. Wow, and I like that I guess I'm old enough, I remember zip drives. I remember when zip drives were kind of cool. It was like, oh my gosh, zip drives. Yeah, now it's like, yeah, zip drive. It's a MacGuffin, but they're rumors of the old computer disk. Primary rumor is that someone inside the prison knows where it is. Another rumor suggests the information on the disk somehow relates to the prison itself. The last is not true unless you want it to be. Sergeant Cutler realizes his sanctuary is now quite literally his prison. He's stuck. He must get out, but by now intelligence agencies are sniffing around for the zip disk. He's ready to cut a deal with whoever he thinks can get him far away from here alive. And there's a con man who knows about the disk, but he's murdered by two brothers. And then two rival intel agencies looking for the disk arrive with backup at the prison. This puts the prison between two sizable forces, likely one U.S. and one Soviet, with the Poles in the middle. No one is willing to back down. A fight is about to break out. So we can see things, right? So we get the escalations here. So rumors about the MacGuffin. I guess the primary object of the MacGuffin, or the thing that the MacGuffin relates to the most, starts to make moves. Something else starts to then make moves counter that first person. So if we have forces A, who are, I guess, in a way, activated by the MacGuffin to do something. Now come forces B that are in opposition to force A, and they move. And then the final escalation, where in which that's even raised even further. In this case, there's forces C and D coming in to just overpower the situation, potentially with the help of the first two forces or against. But there's a lot of escalation. Brian Smith looked up cantonment for me, or cantonment. I don't know what that would be. Right, but he says cantonment, a military garrison or camp. He's never heard of it, but that's according to Google. Well, I believe you, Google. That's a new word, and a word for the day. Cantonment, a military garrison or camp. I like it. Was it something to do with maybe the Swiss cantons? I don't know. Interesting. We do not have a map of the prison unless maybe it's on. I don't know if it's one of the maps that we got. So we got a boatload of maps and battle map type things, but we get a list of the locations of the prison. We get a main gate, booking, control, common area, office, day room, cells, basement, guard towers, wheat fields, potato fields, pens, sewers. It's all good stuff. And we get some NPCs. There's the man known as Rasputin. Oh, here we go. So here's a nice prison map. I want to say that we did get this, but if we didn't, pull it up here. And he's very religious, Rasputin. His theology is a mix of messianic fervor and commitment to rejuvenating the soul by renewing the earth. We get the Chicken Man, Jakob Dabrowski, otherwise known as Carl Lindbergh. And we get some other guys, those brothers. Sergeant Cutler, a.k.a. is that Casper Wasaki? Casper? I don't know. Or Gustav Krantz. So that's the prison. Very much reminds me of those sort of threat decks that were in Beyond the Wall. Though the threat decks seem to be both maybe more. Well, it was both the threat decks seem to be going from the antagonist down, right? So here the threat is the blight. The blight is, something unleashes the blight, and then the blight's working, and you got to stop the blight, and everything is related to that. This is maybe from going from the location out. Maybe this is on a meta level. From a player level, does it really matter? Because the blight is probably tied to a location, and there's the location where the center of the blight, and there's also whichever village is affected by the location. But in terms of thinking about it, I think the threat deck is all about, hey, you have an interesting antagonist, and then what kind of drawing out from that antagonist all these different things and then placing it. These are, hey, we have a location, and then you're thinking about all the things that might be happening in the location, and then you're placing it. It seems like you could even work those things together conceptually if you wanted to. These things are happening in the prison. Something else is essentially an antagonist that's there, has its own plans, and then at some point they will meet together. Might be an interesting thing to do as an exercise at some point. It's interesting, the different ways you can look at these things. I think part of the whole idea of Twilight 2000 is there are no real massive antagonist forces. Everything is just scattered. So you're just dealing with remnants that are in specific places, whereas the threat decks are more about, here is a single monolithic regional, at least, threat of some kind. And that threat's going to be existing in multiple things. Not that you can't have multiple, and we talked about the factions, but I think that one of the things with the factions is that they are sort of fundamentally, I think they made even a point of saying kind of how not monolithic they are, that there are kind of different factional elements doing different things, but that it's very loosely organized, where I think mostly the antagonists in the kind of threat deck sense are either more individual, unique, and or organized. But it's certainly interesting to see different ways of kind of laying out the same kind of thing, which is giving your sandbox content. We have America Town. Yeah, America Town. Boop, 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 boop. Go, America Town, go. Rumors, a local town is under the protection of U.S. Special Forces. It's a sanctuary for civilians and American military personnel. A local town is under martial law ruled by the U.S. Army with an iron fist. A rebellion brews against the occupying forces of a nearby town. The rebels seek help in liberating their people. So this one is more of a goals thing, players' goals. Whereas I really liked the prison rumors because they all related to practical things. This is more ideological. There's help, we're being oppressed kind of thing, or this is somewhere safe. Let's go link up with them. Another one of the rumors is a U.S. officer created a little piece of home in a local town, even opening a drive-in movie theater, which might be great from a fictional standpoint, but it's not practical. It's like, let's go watch a home movie and I'll feel better about home, but that doesn't help us eat, doesn't help us survive, kind of thing. Or this one, U.S. war criminals have hidden themselves among locals in a nearby town. If you had some other mission, that'd be great, but otherwise it's more like you want to bring these to justice because justice with a capital J versus I need ammo or we need food. We need food. Warrior is about to die. But I think so we have this interesting contrast. So you can look at, what motivates our players? If it's something more ideological, more philosophical, then maybe America Town's a better location for them versus the prison. Of course, you can just drop them both on the map and see which one they go to. Which one pulls at them more? Maybe one and then the other. We want to help them, but first we need ammo, so we're going to go to the prison, and then we're going to turn around and go to America Town once we've gotten fuel or ammo or whatever else we need. I'll read the first paragraph of the situation again. This town is safe, at least by the looks of it. The U.S. military is here. Marauders stay away. Soviets stay away. The town has the veneer of the world before the war. But like most things that make one happy after the war, this happiness too is fleeting. For if you look closer, the U.S. commander here does not only quote-unquote protect the population, but he also enslaves and abuses them. Well, that's sad. Got checkpoints on the roads. The countdown here only have 2 levels of the countdown. The town situation degrades quickly while the PCs are visiting. The central question for the PCs is whether they go along with this extreme quote-unquote American experiment or try to stop Westmoreland. A likely order of events follows. The events header later explains things in more detail. So then we have one is the DIA, Department of, I'm not sure, makes a move against Westmoreland and recruits the PCs to help. Perhaps the spooks already have people inside the town. Perhaps the PCs can be on their inside men. Not only is Westmoreland a rogue officer, he's gone very, very bad. I guess DIA is some kind of intelligence service. And then that's one event. And then after that, the resistance makes their move by simultaneously attacking several targets in town, including the artillery. And the KGB are coordinate on attacks on the town from the outside. And then if they take down the artillery, this attack has a better chance to succeed. And the PCs have to make a choice, right? Help or no help. Locations, we get town hall, the high school, the diner, the park, the drive-in. They do have a drive-in. Westmoreland's house, he's the head of this thing. And the police station, NPCs, we have Westmoreland and some other guys. Very nice look at this town. And then we do have some events. I'm just skipping past some of the other NPCs. Below, you can find a number of specific potential events that can occur at the scenario site. Some of them are related to the countdown. Others are independent from it. These events are all optional to be used or not used, depending on the PC's action. Choose or roll. So we've got at least 4. How many hours? It's 6. Oh, we've got 10. So some of these are 2 suspected members of the resistance are arrested, slated to be executed publicly. A small unit of mostly NATO soldiers arrive, claiming a Soviet attack is imminent. They have some intel that backs this up. The driving gets one of the last movies made before the war. Shut everything down. Almost everyone in town is excited. A intelligence agent arrives in the town under the guise of a motor pool private. She assesses the PCs for suitability in, quote-unquote, removing Westmoreland from the battlefield. A KGB agent who has been embedded here for some time begins to follow the PCs. If he or she finds them trustworthy, they ask for help getting out of town. The agent promises to help liberate it later. Westmoreland becomes impressed enough with some action on the PC's part that he promotes them to his personal retinue. So there are some good ones. And I think that their description of these as being optional or good. None of these events have to happen for the main things to occur. They don't stop or do anything, but they change the flavor a bit. Obviously, you become part of Westmoreland's retinue, personal retinue. Maybe that means that you're on his side and you're going to fight harder to help him. Maybe that puts you in a great spot if you're going to shank him in the back at a key moment. Certainly, when the different intelligence agents kind of moving around might want to recruit you or not, that changes things also. So on and so forth. The movie is just kind of a nice thing. The Children's Crusade. I will read just a little bit of this. The military academy produced some of Poland/Sweden's best soldiers. Sadly, like so many soldiers now, most of them are dead. Those left behind were the young cadets, and they've made their school a defensible position from which they conduct hit-and-run actions against the quote-unquote enemy. But they are just kids, child soldiers. What are the PCs going to do if they meet them? What if they have to fight them? The situation is this military academy once trained college-age students only, but during the 90s, it became clear a larger standing army would be necessary to counter any threat. They were right to worry for, or I say Soviet threat. They were right to worry for the USSR came back with an ursine roar. So older cadets were absorbed into the fighting, into the active military, but there are still younger cadets here. As far as rumors, we have a former military academy, now a fortress protected by veteran soldiers. Someone is rounding up POWs, mostly Soviet, and keeping them in the area doing labor. The PCs come across a few children who've clearly just been in a firefight. The kids are in uniform, calm, but evasive about who they are. And there's another one, but I will leave that alone. The countdown for this one. The enemies are at the gates. Be they Marauders, Soviets, or even Americans, someone decided to take this position. It might be for their supplies. It might be for the fortifications. It might be for revenge. The children have killed a lot of people of late. Regardless, the place is about to come under siege. And the folks there refuse to evacuate. They will make a last stand here if need be. On top of that, they decide to make their move. Oh, there's a... I guess I was going to say the two people's names, but there are two of them, and one of them is going to try to make a move against the other. He's willing to reward the PCs with a good deal of supplies if they back him. So the one who's looking to stab their partner in the back is willing to help the PCs out. The PCs help him out. There's a groundskeeper and the POWs, I guess, who are there, who are ready to rebel. So what happens is once the PCs arrive, all the major factions are going to approach them. If they choose a side, another side is going to try to assassinate one or more of them. If they choose no side, they're going to be arrested and their weapons seized. Let's see, there's going to be the attempted coup. There's going to be a scouting team from an enemy force who's going to arrive on the scene and demand surrender. The boss or bosses are going to refuse to back down, and then there's going to be an attack. Then we have some locations: the main hall, dormitories, motor pool, another nice map, armory, football pitch, which is also a graveyard, and the basketball court, which is holding the POW camp, a memorial, and an infirmary. And then we have some NPCs, and then another 10. What are we calling these? Events, but what's the word I'm looking for? They are optional. Thank you, brain. Optional events. A couple of them, the POWs organize a hunger strike. The refugees show up looking for food, shelter, and anything to help. And let's see, relatives of a few cadets show up looking for refuge. A cache of intel is found. There's a dysentery epidemic. So some interesting things happening there at the school. All right, being cognizant again of time, I'm going to skip the burnt town. I think we get the idea of what these are like. I don't think there's much left, though. I think I'm almost done. Oh, but now we get a scenario site generator. Now we're talking. So it's going to give us, we're going to roll for a bunch of stuff. We got rural sites, urban sites, conditions, factions, allegiances, populations, characteristics of the site, the situation, things like power struggles, famines, lack of resources, internal strife. I'm going to have to borrow liberally from this for my own ends because this looks really good. Key NPCs, roll twice and combined. So you might, a thief who motivation is leisure, a sniper whose motivation is faith, so on and so forth. And then events, murder, bad weather, attacks, love triangles, shelling, trials, theft, sabotage, marauders. Oh my goodness, there are solo rules. I forgot about this. These rules should be considered guidelines for your solo game. You, the player, have total agency. We've provided a host of prompts, tables, and ideas to help you form your progress through the hex crawl of your world. What you find may be random. How you tie it together as a narrative need not be. And that's like the golden rule of random generation. What you find may be random. How you tie it together as a narrative need not be. Remember that, GMs. Keep that in mind whether you're playing by yourself or with others. Saddle up your troops and get ready to endure the harsh world of Twilight 2000 as a single player. Oh, this is really cool. I might have to come back and do like a session of this to try out. I might need more space for that. I might need to figure out when I can secure some space outside of this little desk area to set up shop for a solo Twilight 2000 run. So the tools you need, the travel map, the travel routes, combat rules, battle maps. So the getting started, the procedure is you're going to roll for weather changes. You're going to assign and resolve tasks for each PC. You're going to draw an encounter card. If an encounter is triggered, you're going to roll recon to see if the PCs can avoid it or not. If needed, resolve the encounter using the rules for social conflict or combat. There's an oracle below to adjudicate situations that the rules do not clearly resolve. Proceed to the next shift. This seems bod arse. That's bod arse, man. We get the oracle here. While the tools in the normal rules should be enough to play solo for quite some time and resolve most situations, there will be times when you will need a little more guidance. That's where the oracle comes in. In role-playing games, an oracle is a mechanic that provides a solo player with a method to generate answers to their questions, while also providing random encounters. This box set includes a deck of cards to generate encounters, and this deck will also be given further uses as an oracle in solo play. You can also use any standard deck of cards with no jokers. When consulting the oracle, you will draw a card from the deck. There is a binary quality to each draw, red and black. We further granulate this by what's on the card, but a lot can be discovered by simply looking at the color. Red is a boon, black is a hazard of some sort. Some instances, you might only want to know the very general disposition of an encounter, helpful or hazardous. In others, you need to know to what degree. Look at the value on the card. This tells you how hazardous or helpful the encounter is. A 2 of diamonds is neutral. It's not liable to harm you. The same applies to a 2 of clubs or any other suit. As you increase the card's value, you move further away from neutral. Oh man, that's really, really cool. Creating encounters. The encounter card deck in this box set includes 52 complete specific encounters. However, you might find yourself wanting more, or you might experiment with generating different encounters to play. For this, you can use the oracle and the tools and tables that follow in this section. Let's see, the number 2 card category in the table for solo rules is quote-unquote PCs. To allow for solo role-playing opportunities within your group, we recommend deciding on your PC's personas and drawing 2 cards as shown for NPCs in this section. Enacting the results on the table is up to you, but suggestions of what they might mean appear below. And then bond, 2 characters form a bond, or a bond a PC has to an NPC comes into play. Excuse me. So we got some different encounter types. Man, this is really cool. I'm going to have to try this out. Fight. 2 PCs get into a fight. This needs to be a physical fight. Simply an argument. Personal motive. A PC's personal motive gets triggered. This could provide a new course for your session. More morale. The unit's overall morale shifts for some reason. It might be positive or negative. Helpful or hazardous. Helpful or hazardous is the primary question that the solo player needs to know about an encounter. To determine the essential nature of an encounter, draw a card. Red cards are potentially helpful. Black cards are potentially harmful. The value of the card tells you just how dangerous or fortunate an encounter might be. See the table to the right. So aces are the most deadly, going down, down, down. Twos are neutral. They really don't actually. Twos, threes, and fours are all neutral. And then sort of mild effects from 5 to 7. 8 through 10 are dangerous or helpful. And then jacks and queens are vary one way or the other. And then kings and aces are either deadly or life-saving. Then we get some more motives. Another table with motives. And we get some more stuff. Man, really cool. Really cool. We get settlements, problems, and attitudes. And then we can get some other elements we can add on to there. We need more information. I might have to just play that through at some point on another stream. If I can set it up, maybe I can do, I don't know if I can do it on, I'm not on Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or anything like that. I got to see, maybe there's a way to figure out how to do this. Or you just got to set up stuff to do it in person. But that's really cool. Then we get in Appendix 2, conversion rules. Okay, this is just to convert stuff from earlier editions of Twilight 2000 to 4th edition. So if you've been sitting on older Twilight 2000 material and you're wondering how to get it to this version, they got rules for you. So that got you covered. I'm not going to run through there. And we do get some designer notes and an index, and then we are done. All right, folks. If you've made it through all this, you have made it through essentially everything from the box set to the rule books. I think I will definitely... stupid acrobat. I think I will definitely have to give that solo a ride. See how it checks out. I really dig a lot of the elements in here. I think the rules seem to be rather clear. There's nothing that seemed super confusing. Obviously, this is just from reading it. Perhaps if I do end up being able to make a go at trying to play it solo, I'll get more into how the rules play out and if they appear to be as reasonable as they seem to be. Other than that, it's got all the atmospheric stuff. The box set has a lot of the great physical materials. If you really like physical stuff, the quality of all that stuff was really nice. Art is amazing. The layout is really good. Everything's, I don't know, seems pretty top notch. I feel like if you're into this kind of thing, then this might be the thing you're into. If you're looking for sort of a alternate history, post-apocalyptic, post-World War III kind of gig, Twilight 2000 might be your jam. It definitely is one. I think they've even mentioned here specifically that it's definitely a game that will benefit from some kind of campaign. I'm not saying you got to play for years and years to make sense of it, but I think it's going to work better for that, where you can really get into it than a one-shot, because a lot of the things I think are real drivers, that kind of scrapping for survival and then making it look to do what more can we do? Can we do better than survival? That kind of thing. Those themes, sure, you can have scarcity in a one shot. Sure, you can present kind of a theme, but I feel like the real weight of it and the real opportunity and all the kind of ways that will play really come out by playing at least for a few sessions. Now, nothing says the rules seem to want you to generate content as you play. I'm not sure that is realistic. I don't know if they're saying that they need to generate content as you're playing. I think you can do that work whenever you like to. All the stuff, the kind of sandboxy stuff, I think as a GM, you can do it whenever you feel comfortable. I think it seems like the kind of rhythm is that you'd be is that your prep pre-session would sort of putting stuff out there that's kind of in their realm wherever they are. So you think about wherever they went to on the map in the last section, wherever they are, and then maybe you add a couple things to the map as they're moving east to west, north to south, whatever. So you're kind of rolling out a few new things each time. So you maybe start off with, here they are, the Battle of Calais, I think, or whatever it was, and then bam, then they start to move off, and then they're moving a new area, and then you look at, okay, they've left some of the landmarks away because they just drove out of range somewhat of it. Presumably they could go back, but if they do, then I've got that stuff created. Now what's ahead of them? I don't think they necessarily mean it to, in the game, you're supposed to be doing all this. I really think is you're supposed to look at the map. Okay, here's the radius of where they can go, essentially. Then here are a couple spots, and then you just generate a few more spots, or take some of these scenario spots and plunk them down wherever they are, and you just keep going. And that way you just you're just building up the tapestry of your version of post-apocalyptic Europe as you go. But I definitely think that they're encouraging you not to do everything at once, and they're encouraging you to kind of space it out. But no, I don't think they mean that you're just supposed to show up and not have anything prepped, and then when they decide to go a direction, you start rolling dice. Joe says, thanks for the read along. The rules are a bit less confusing now. Oh, great. I think sometimes it can often help. Honestly, I think I've said this before, but just reading them out loud, I think, can help. And certainly reading them along with somebody else can help too. Great. I think, I don't have any more rules of Twilight 2000. I think I'm going to see when I can schedule, but it might not be right away. It might be after the holidays, might be some down the line. I'm definitely going to come back and try to do a solo session. And maybe during the solo session, just for giggles, we will generate stuff as we go and just take the time to do that, just because it'll give us a chance to use all the tables and see how they all work. But there's a lot of ways to generate content. I think I like that they really kind of made a strong move. Hey, this is a sandbox game. We're going doing that. And that's what we're sort of doing. And all their tools are really supporting that. And they're not trying to hedge and say, oh, but this or oh, but that. They're like, no, this is the game. And we've got forces, factions, all the stuff that are going to play to give you kind of narrative movement, but essentially, hey, you're out there in the world, and the onus is on you and your players to kind of make that happen. So do that, and we will support you. And it seems like they gave you the content to do it, but it'll be interesting if I can get in and get a solo game, kind of seeing how it is in play. All right, folks. Well, that is it. That was Twilight 2000 from Free League. I really enjoyed the read a lot. Let me know what you think in the comments and elsewhere. I'm going to wrap up the chat and wrap up the stream. But on your way out, if you give a thumbs up, that would be awesome. If you find yourself watching this and you're not subscribed to the channel, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? Helps me out. Doesn't really hurt you. Just does algorithm things and shows the YouTubes and everybody that, hey, people like this stuff. Someone out there. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you watch or listen to this. As I'm recording this during the holiday season, happy holidays, everybody. I will talk to you tomorrow. Jaw says solo session will be great to watch. Awesome. I definitely want to do it, so I'm going to figure out how to make it done. Might take me a bit, but I am definitely going to figure out how to make it done. Game on, everybody.